If you can't use Linux, you're not a cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer. Simple as that. The moment something breaks in the real world, you're going to find yourself inside a terminal. Not a dashboard, but a terminal. My name is Faisal and I've been in IT since 2014. I started from support desk all the way up to senior cloud and DevOps consultant, working for big organizations such as PwC, IBM, and SSE. And I can tell you for sure that the engineers who succeed in this field are not the ones with the shiny certifications. The ones that get to keep their job are the ones who can actually do the job without someone hand-holding them. So for you to be that kind of engineer, you need to get really comfortable with the Linux terminal, because not only do you need to know Linux, Linux comes in handy when you start using Terraform, when you start working with CI/CD pipelines and stuff. So this is one of the fundamental things that you must nail down as a cloud and DevOps engineer. So today I'm sharing with you the complete Linux module, the same exact module my students go through inside Cloud School. No fluff, no hello world stuff, exactly everything I know, the skills that took me from 25,000 to 130,000 plus a year. So I'm not teaching you things that you might need. I'm going to be teaching you things that you will most definitely need in a nice, precise, concise format. So in this course, you're going to go from zero all the way to navigating the Linux file system, working with permissions, users, processes, and using SSH to access other virtual machines. So all the skills that you're going to be learning from this is exactly what I do in my day-to-day as a cloud and DevOps engineer. So I want you to open a terminal next to the video that you're watching, because watching is actually not the same as doing, as we all know. So don't just be a passive watcher, but follow along and make sure that you are benefiting from this. If you want to become an engineer, you need to get hands-on, so get comfortable with this process. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started.
Welcome to the Linux module. In this module, we are going to learn about one of the most critical topics for anyone working in cloud engineering or IT. This is going to be your introduction to Linux, where we are going to cover everything you absolutely need to know to get started. Now, before we start working with commands, I just wanted to set the foundation and explain not just what Linux is, but why it is essential, how it works, and how you can use it in your career. So let's get started. So let's start by asking an important question. Why Linux? Why is this operating system such a big deal in the world of IT and cloud engineering? First, Linux is absolutely essential for cloud engineers. Almost every cloud platform, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, relies heavily on Linux as the backbone for their services. Many core applications and technologies are built to run on Linux environments. Linux is lightweight, secure, and free to use. So these features make it ideal for servers, cloud platforms, and even smaller devices. Unlike Windows, which can be costly and heavy on resources, Linux offers flexibility and efficiency. Most organizations today use Linux for their servers instead of Windows. Why? Because it is open source, which means no expensive licensing fees, and it provides the kind of stability and reliability businesses demand. Finally, Linux isn't just for cloud environments, it's actually everywhere. Think about the devices that you use every day. Your smartphone, Android, runs on Linux. The smart TV that you watch, Linux. The router that's connecting you to the internet runs on Linux. So it is deeply embedded in the technologies that we use in our everyday life. So that's why learning Linux is going to be quite important. Now, to truly understand Linux, let's take a brief look at its history. Before Linux, there was Unix. Unix was developed back in the late 1960s, and it became the foundation for many operating systems. However, because it was largely commercialized, which made it expensive and restricted in terms of access, so this is where Linux comes in. Linux was created as part of the Free Software Foundation, or FSF, movement, and the idea behind FSF was to make software free and accessible to everyone. A key part of this movement was the GNU project, and GNU stands for GNU Not Unix, and this provided free tools and utilities to create Unix-like systems. So for example, tools like CD, ls, things that we are going to learn about throughout the course, and many others that you use in the terminal today come from GNU. Now, in 1991, Linus Torvalds, a Finnish computer science student, created the Linux kernel. The kernel is literally the heart of the operating system. So it handles communication between hardware and the software. So when you combine the kernel with the GNU tools, you get the Linux operating system we use today. So to sum it up, Linux was born out of a need for open, free, and powerful software, and it has since grown into one of the most widely used and respected operating systems in the world. Now that we know what Linux is and where it came from, let's quickly talk about the Linux distributions, or distros as they're often called. So prior to the Linux distributions, if you wanted to install Linux, you had to do it manually. So this is why the distribution came in, and this is essentially just a version of Linux that combines the kernel with GNU. That way you get your operating system. For example, some of the most Linux distributions include Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is a distribution widely used in enterprise environments. And we also have Debian, which is a community-driven distro that's known for its stability and forms the basis for many others. We also have Ubuntu, which is a user-friendly distro derived from Debian, and it is great for both beginners and professionals. CentOS, which is a free version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and this is commonly used in enterprises. Finally, Oracle Linux, and this is used in Oracle-based environments for database and cloud solutions. Now here's a pro interview tip for you. Sometimes you get asked about the different types of Linux distributions. So as long as you're familiar with the ones I just mentioned above, you should be golden, because there's many distributions out there. As long as you know a few, then you're okay. You're going to be deploying servers in the cloud, and you need to be familiar with how to connect to them, how to create files and folders, and how to troubleshoot. Throughout this module, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know to be proficient when it comes to managing servers in the cloud as a cloud engineer. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. This video is for those of you using a Windows computer so that you can follow along for the rest of the module. As you know, you are not able to run Linux commands on your Windows computer directly. So one of the options that we have is to use a free tool called VirtualBox. So let's go ahead and install this tool. So to begin with, just go to your favorite search engine and search for VirtualBox. And now press enter. We want to go to this URL here, virtualbox.org, and we want to click on the first link that we see here, Oracle VirtualBox. Next, we need to click on download, and now we need to select the platform where we want to install VirtualBox. Since we are using a Windows computer, we are going to select Windows hosts. This is going to download the exe file for you. So once this is completed, just click on open file. Next, we need to go through the installation wizard. Let's click on next here. And now let's accept the license agreement and click on next. Click on next and proceed with the installation here. So here is up to you. Select the options that you want or deselect the options that you do not want. I'm going to leave everything as it is and click on next. Finally, we need to click on install. The installation is complete. Now we need to click on the finish button to exit the setup wizard. And if you keep this checkbox selected, it is going to launch the VirtualBox for us. So that's fine. Now we can go ahead and click on finish. If you don't see the VirtualBox come up here, just look at the taskbar here. So let's click on it, and this now launches the VirtualBox manager. Okay, so VirtualBox has now been installed. Next, we need to install the OS, which is going to be Ubuntu. So we are going to download the Ubuntu file and we are going to install it inside VirtualBox. So for that, we need to go back to the browser and let's search for Ubuntu ISO, and let's go to ubuntu.com. We have two options. We can either install the desktop version or the server version. And the desktop version is what you get the graphical user interface with. So we get the buttons and we see all the user interface. However, as a cloud engineer, the servers that you deploy on the cloud, they are not going to have a graphical user interface for you to click around, and it's all going to be through the terminal. So we want to mimic that same setup. So for that, we are going to click on server here, and we are going to download the server version by clicking on this link here. this is now going to download the ISO file and is going to take a while depending on how fast your internet speed is. So let's wait for this to complete and we will resume once this is done. The ISO file has now downloaded successfully. Let's go to VirtualBox. We want to create a new virtual machine inside VirtualBox. So we are going to click on New and we can give the virtual machine a name. So I'm just going to call it Ubuntu. This is going to be stored in this directory. That's fine. And now we need to select the ISO image that we just downloaded. So let's browse to the downloads folder. So here's the ISO image that we just downloaded and it is in my downloads folder. So select it and now click on open. So next, let's expand the unattended install so that we don't get prompted for anything during the installation. We need to set up our username and password for the virtual machine. So this is my username and this is my password. And this is the name of the computer, which is the host name. That's all we need to change. So now let's go to hardware and here we need to set up how much memory and how much processors we need to give the virtual machine. And remember, this is based on how much resources you have available on your computer. So if I right click the Windows icon here and I go to system, you can see that I have 32 gig. So the memory that I assign to the virtual machine here is going to come off from my actual computer. So if you have good amount of memory like I do, then give it maybe 4 gig. That should be sufficient. And now in terms of processor, let's just give it 4. That should be enough. Now in terms of hard disk, we need to select how much space that we need to give the disk that's going to be attached to the VM. So for now, this is set to 25 gig. Again, this just depends on how much space that you have on your hard disk. So I've got plenty here. So again, this is just going to come off what I have available on my physical computer. So 25 gig is more than enough, I guess. And then if anything, we can extend it later on if required. Okay. And now let's click on finish here. And now this is going to power up the VM and is going to install everything, as you can see. So let's just wait for this to complete and we will resume once it is done. And there we go. Ubuntu has now been installed and we are being prompted for our login credentials that we have set up previously. So now go ahead and enter your username and password. So this is my username, press enter and now enter your password, which you are not going to see. So just type your password and now press enter. We are now inside our Ubuntu VM, which is running on a Windows computer. Amazing. So now we can just run our Linux commands here as per usual. So I'm just running the command hostname, as you see. Let's press enter to see what is the hostname. And there we go. This is the output Ubuntu. So going forward, you should be able to follow along for the rest of the module using this Ubuntu VM. So that's it for this video and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to see how to install VMware Fusion Pro in order for us to be able to run a Ubuntu virtual machine on our Mac. So just search for VMware Fusion Pro. And as you can see here, this is available and free for personal use. So if we go to this link here, we need to click on this link here, VMware Fusion Pro download. So on this page, just click on login here in the top right corner and select register. Enter your email address here and then enter the text that you see from the image in this box. Okay, and then click on next. Now enter the code that was sent to your email address. Okay, and now we need to enter our details here to create our account. So go ahead and do that. Accept the terms of use and then click on create account. Don't worry about building your profile, I guess. Just click on I will do it later. Let's log in. So enter your username, which is just your email address that you just used. Click on next. Click on next here. Enter your password and click on sign in. Okay, so we've now signed in. And let's click on this link here. We are looking for this here, Fusion Pro 13. So let's click on this and let's get the latest release, which is 13.6.2. Click on I agree to the terms and conditions. Now let's download the file by clicking on this button here. We need to have additional verification to proceed. Okay, let's click on yes. So go ahead and fill this box here with your details and then click on submit. Let's click on the download button here to download the file, hopefully. Now go ahead and save the file somewhere on your Mac and click on save. So here's the DMG file that we just downloaded. So in your case, just go to wherever you save the file, right click it and then click on open. And now we need to go through the process of installing it. Now just right click and then click on open. And now click on open again. Okay, now you need to enter your admin password for the Mac. And let's agree to this. Okay, done. So we need to give the VMware Fusion access to the keyboard and mouse. Let's click on OK here. And let's open the system settings. So this is going to open this accessibility page. And you need to toggle this to allow it, and then authenticate using Touch ID or your password. And now we can close this window. So we've got the VMware Fusion Pro. Now we need to get the ISO image. We are looking to install Ubuntu. So let's go to our web browser again and let's search for Ubuntu. So just search for Ubuntu ISO. Let's go to this link here, download Ubuntu. And you've got two options. You can either get the desktop version or you can get the server version. So the desktop version is just going to be like Windows, where you have a graphical user interface for you to click around. And the server version is what is going to simulate what you're going to be using as a cloud engineer. For this purpose, we are going to use server installation. So let's click on server. Now, the version of the ISO image that you get is going to depend on the chip that your Mac OS is using. So if you're using the Intel version, just download this version that you see here, which is going to be compatible with your Mac. However, if you're using an M chip, then you need to scroll down and come to ARM. So this is going to be the one that is going to be compatible with your Mac OS. To find out the chip that you're using, you can just go to the Apple icon on the top and then click on About this Mac. So if you just look at the chip, this is going to tell you the kind of chip that you're using, whether you're using an Intel based or M chips. So since I'm using the M chip, I need to download the ARM version of this image. So I'm going to click on ARM here. So click on this and this is going to download the ISO image. I've already downloaded the ISO image and I'm just going to drag the ISO image here. And now select the ISO image and click on continue. So here you have a summary of how your virtual machine is going to look like. So this is going to assign 20 gig of hard disk from your Mac, and it's also going to allocate 4 gig of memory to this virtual machine. And it's going to also have 2 CPU cores. Again, this is going to come off your Mac. If you are happy with this, just click on finish. Alternatively, you can just click on customize settings to change the values that you see here. So I'm going to click on finish. Now we need to save the virtual machine as a file. So automatically this folder is going to be created for you, which is going to be inside your user profile. And now click on save. So this is going to spin up the Linux operating system. And now we need to go through the installation process. Select the first option that you see here, try or install Ubuntu server, and then press enter. Okay, so next we need to choose the language that we want to use. So I'm going to choose English UK and just use your up and down arrows to choose the appropriate language because we can't really use our mouse. So press enter here. We want to update to the new installer. Select the first option here. Alternatively, if you do not want to update, you can continue without updating. So I'm going to select update to the new installer. So I get the latest version, which is 24.10.1. Next, we need to choose the keyboard layout. So I'm going to leave it as it is. Press done here. And now we need to choose the base for the installation. So we want to keep it as it is and just choose the Ubuntu server and press enter. So this is automatically going to get an IP address from your local network. So you can see that this has now been assigned the IP address 192.168.41128. And now I'm going to press enter. I don't need proxy, so press done. Press done on this window as well. And on this window, we are going to use the entire disk. So this is the 20 gig that's going to be allocated to this virtual machine. So just go all the way down and press done. Now press done again. So once we continue, this is going to begin the installation process. And it just warns you that this is going to result in loss of data on the disks selected to be formatted. So the 20 gig that's been allocated to this VM is going to be formatted. Maybe just take a backup of your disk if you want to be safe. But I'm going to press Control and the Command key to come out of this so that I can use my mouse. And now if I click on the Apple icon, I can go to About this Mac again. And if I click on More Info, as you can see, this is the storage that I have. The 20 gig is going to be taken from the 451 gig that's available at the moment on my Mac. So I'm not really going to worry about this. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. And now we need to provide the username and password that we are going to use to log on. And now this is the name of the server. You can call it whatever you want. Now pick the username that you want to use to log on to the computer. And now we need to choose a password. And let's confirm that password. And now press done. We don't want to upgrade to Ubuntu Pro, so we are going to skip it for now. So press on continue. This is prompting us if we want to install OpenSSH. So this is basically when you want to connect to this VM from another computer. So let's press space here to install OpenSSH and let's press on done. Okay, we don't want to install any of this. I'm going to press done here and this is going to start installing the system. Okay, so the installation has now completed. So we need to reboot this. So press on reboot now. So we need to remove the ISO image. So press Control Command on your keyboard and click on the settings button here and go to CD and DVD drives. And we want to remove this from here. So for us to be able to remove it, we need to shut down the VM. So let's quickly do that. Close this window here and go to virtual machine and then click on shut down. Okay, so yeah, we want to shut down. So click on shut down here. And now let's go to settings. Let's go to CD, DVD, expand advanced options, and let's remove the CD, DVD drive from here. Yeah, we want to remove it. Okay, and now let's power up the VM. You can either go to virtual machine and then click on startup, or you can click on this button here. So let's click on startup here. Okay, and there we go. We are now being prompted to log into our Ubuntu VM using the credentials that we've set up earlier. So enter your username here, press enter, and now enter your password. So obviously you're not able to see your password because this is hidden. So just type it and then press enter. And there you go. You are now logged onto the Ubuntu VM. So going forward, you should be able to follow along the rest of the module using this VM. So now let's just quickly see how to open and access this VM. So press Control Command and then let's shut down this VM here and click on shutdown. Close this window here. So let's close this app as well, just so that we can start from the beginning so that you're able to see how to access it. So search for VMware Fusion. So this automatically opens up this window, but in case you don't see it, click on File and then go to Open Recent. And then you should be able to see your VM here. So if I click on this, this is going to open the VM and it is going to boot it up. So there you go. You now have a virtual machine that is running inside your Mac. And this is basically what a virtual machine is just a computer that's running inside another computer. But in the cloud, it is not going to be deployed on your computer. It is just going to be deployed on someone else's computer. And then you can just use the internet to connect to that computer. So that's it for this video. Go ahead and install this and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to take a quick overview on the Linux file system. So let's get started. So the Linux file system is basically similar to the Windows file system in a way, whereby you have the C drive, and the C drive is where you find all your system related files and folders. Similarly here, we have the root directory, which is where you would find anything to do with your Linux operating system. And the root directory in Linux is depicted as the / that you see here. And there's nothing above the root directory. So this is the entry point of your Linux OS. So under the root directory, you can find some of the following folders depending on which OS you are using. So if you are using a Mac, the folders that you see might be slightly different than if you were on a Linux computer like a Ubuntu. However, most of the major folders are still the same between the two OSs. And here we have the following folders, and under the following folders, you're going to find files and folders. So for example, here I have the var directory, and under the var directory, you're going to find a folder called log and another one called run. And under the log directory, you're going to find all the log files in there. Okay. So now that you have a quick overview on the file system, let's quickly switch over to Visual Studio Code to take a closer look at each of these directories. So here I am in Visual Studio Code in my bash terminal, and in here I'm going to run the command man, which is a command that we use anytime we want to find more information about a specific command that we are learning about. So man followed by hire, and this is going to show us the file system hierarchy. So let's take a look at this. This is the manual page, and here are some of the folders that you will find under the root directory. We are not going to cover all of these folders in here because end of the day, we are working as cloud engineers and not Linux administrators. We just need to have an idea of the most important folders. And most importantly, we need to just know which commands that we need to use for whatever work we are doing. So this is the root directory, which is at the top of the file system. And under the root directory, you're going to find the following folders. So here we have the root directory, which is beginning with a /, which means the folder that you're currently looking at is going to be under the root directory. And the bin directory is basically where you find most of the commands that we are going to be learning about going forward. So let's quickly take a look at this directory and what's in it. Next, we need to clear the terminal by pressing Ctrl L. And now we can run the command ls / first to see what is inside the root directory. And because I'm currently on a Mac, here are the folders that I find under my root directory. If you are using a Ubuntu, your output might be slightly different. So we want to take a look at the bin directory. So we are going to run the command ls space / which is the root. Now under root, we have bin. So let's press enter. As you can see here, we have a lot of commands. So for example, we just run the command ls and you find the ls command in the bin directory as you see here. So any command that you run, behind that command is just a file that Linux is executing in the backend. And here is where you find those files. We don't need to worry about what's in those files. We just need to know about how to execute the command to get the job done. Okay, so most of these commands, we are going to learn about it as we go along in the module. So let's clear the terminal and let's go back to the manual page. Okay, so now let's take a look at etc. And etc is where you're going to find the system configuration files and scripts, files that are created by Linux, and they come with the OS by default, not something that you create. So let's come out over here and let's take a look at the etc directory by running ls / etc. So some of these files we are going to take a look at as we go along. So for example, here we have the hosts file, and the host file here is going to be present on both Windows and Linux. And we basically use this file every time we want to create a local DNS record. So for example, if you have a web app or web server running on your OS and you want to be able to browse to it from your browser, you can just open this file and you can add a DNS record to point to the correct IP address, and you should be able to browse to it. So for example, if you want to see the contents of that, we run the command cat. So the file is going to be in etc directory. So we go root etc / the name of the file, and you can just use tab to autocomplete on your keyboard. And now here is the contents of that file. Do not worry about the host file at this stage, and we are going to get to it as we go along the course. So now let's go back to the manual page and let's take a look at another important directory. So here we have the sbin, where you're going to find the system programs and admin utilities. So ls / sbin. Here we have some important commands that we are going to be executing. For example, ping, reboot, shutdown, ifconfig. We are going to be taking a look at these commands again as we go along. So the directory itself is not really important, and as long as you know what commands you need to use, that's what's important. And another important directory is the USR. So in here we have a folder called local, and under local we have a folder called bin. So the bin directory is where we are going to save any executable files that we have. For example, any user generated scripts. So if you have a Python or Bash script that you want to execute, you are going to be storing it under the bin directory in local. Also, if you have applications that you install, like for example, we are going to be installing Terraform on our Linux computer or on our Mac, we need to save it in the bin directory. So let's quickly take a look at this directory by running the command ls/usr/local/bin. And in here, you're going to find the files. So for example, I've already installed Terraform on my computer, and this is where I can find the executable file for that. And now anytime I run the command Terraform, the system is going to detect it because it's in my local bin directory. I'm going to show you how to install Terraform when we get to the Terraform module. And the final thing I want to show you is the var directory. And this is important one because this is where you are going to find any log files. So when you're troubleshooting a specific issue, the application that you're working with is most likely going to create the log files for that in the log directory. So you need to come to this log directory to read through the log files to troubleshoot the issue you're trying to resolve. So some of these directories, you don't need to remember them, but I guess the ones that you really need to remember is going to be the local bin as well as the var directory. And finally, if you ever want to find out where a specific command files are stored, then you can just run the command which followed by the command. For example, let's take a look at where the ls files are. Then this is going to show us that the ls command is stored in the bin directory as we saw earlier. This was just a quick overview on the Linux file system, so go ahead and practice and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to find out the path you are in when you log on to a Linux virtual machine. So let's begin. As a cloud engineer, you deploy a virtual machine, and as soon as you log on to the virtual machine, this is the screen that you see here, which is the terminal. No graphical user interface for you to click around like if you were using a Windows computer. And when you are connected to a Linux computer, you automatically land on a specific folder, typically your user profile folder. It's very important when you're running commands, for example, if you want to create a folder, delete a folder or file, etc., that you are in the correct location. Otherwise, you're going to be working in the wrong folder and you're going to be deleting folders and files that you shouldn't be. Hence why it's very important to find out where exactly you are in the file system to begin with. And if needed, then you should switch directories, which we are going to learn in the upcoming lessons. Here's a quick diagram where I've added a few more folders to the initial diagram that we've taken a look at previously. And here we have a person. So when you log on to the computer or the virtual machine, you're most probably going to be in this folder here, which is going to be under the home directory. If you are using a Mac, this folder is going to be users for you and not home. However, if you're using a Ubuntu, then this is going to be the folder home, and under home, you're going to find your user profile. If that VM has multiple users, then every user is going to have their own user profile. And inside the user profile, you're going to find the typical folders like documents, downloads, desktop, etc., etc. Suppose that you want to create a file or a folder in the documents directory. So before you run the commands to create the file or the folder, you need to make sure that you are in the correct path. For that, we need to run a specific command. Then that command is going to show us the full path of where we are. Okay. If we want to switch directory, then we run a specific command. And then after you run the command, you are going to be inside the documents folder. For example, if you switch to the documents directory. So this was just a quick overview. Now let's switch to the terminal and let's see how to use the command. So here in the terminal, first of all, we are going to use the man command to see how to use the pwd command. So this is going to return the working directory name, as in the folder that you're currently in. And here's a quick description on the command and how to use it. So go ahead and just use this in your own time. But for now, I'm just going to come out of this by pressing Q on my keyboard, and let's clear the terminal. I want to find out where I am, and I'm going to run the command pwd. That's all. Now press enter. This tells me that I am currently in the root directory. I don't want to be in the root directory and I should switch to my user profile. So here I'm going to run the command cd with a tilde sign. Again, don't worry about the cd command. We are going to cover it in the upcoming lesson. So this is just for me to switch to my user profile, as I've mentioned. Once I run that command, it should take me to my user profile, which is going to be under home if you are on Ubuntu. But because I'm using a Mac, this folder is going to be users for me. So coming back here, let's run the command. Okay, and now let's run the command pwd. And there we go. This shows me the full path of where I am currently in. So I'm currently inside the users directory, which is under root. And inside users, we have another folder called Faisal. And in here, I should have my standard folders that every profile has, like documents, downloads. Okay. So this is essentially the first command that you learn about. And this is very important because you always need to make sure that you are in the correct directory before you execute any command. So this is all I wanted to show you in this video, and we are going to see how to use this command a lot going forward. So go ahead and practice this command, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to switch directories so that we can move around between the folders that we have on our OS. So a switching directory basically means when you want to move from one folder to another. So if you are here and you want to move to here, or if you are here and you want to move to this location, so you just need to run the cd command followed by the path where you want to go to, and then you should land in that said folder. Okay, so let's quickly jump over to Visual Studio Code and let's take a look at how to do that. We are going to first check where we are by running the command pwd, and I'm currently inside my user profile, which is inside users. And let's say I want to go to my documents directory. So for that, we need to run the command cd followed by documents. So the folder names are case sensitive. If your folder begins with capital D, make sure you use capital D, or otherwise, if you try to use tab, it's not going to autocomplete. You can now press tab to autocomplete. And we have 3 folders in our user profile that begin with the letter D. So here we are being prompted to select the one that we want to choose by typing the next few letters. So we are switching to documents. So we need to type DOC. The system should be able to recognize that you want to go to documents. Now let's just press tab, and there we go. It auto completes it for us. So the cd command, by the way, stands for change directory. And now let's press enter. The command seems to have run successfully, but now we need to verify that we are inside documents. And for that, we need to run the command pwd again. And there we go. This is the full path of where we are in. So we are now inside documents, and documents is inside my user profile. Let's say we want to go back to my user profile where we were before. Then we need to run the command cd followed by ... So every folder in Linux has a parent folder. So because we are now in documents, the parent of this folder is going to be Cloud School, and the parent of Cloud School is going to be home, and the parent of home is going to be root. Okay, so if we want to go back one level to Cloud School, then I need to run the command cd ... And now let's press enter. Okay, so now let's run the command pwd, and we have now landed in Faisal. Suppose we want to go to the root. So again, we just type the command cd followed by the path of the root, which is just / here, and then we press enter. And now if we run the command pwd, we are now located at the root and there's nothing above us. So when you want to switch directory, it's very important to know where you are. So if you are located here and you want to switch to a folder that's down here, it means you're going to be navigating down the tree all the way to Cloud School. However, when we were here and we were changing directory to our user profile, our eyes are going to be looking up. So that's why when we run the command cd ... we went back up one level. Okay, and cd / took us all the way up to the root level. We are now at the root. Let's say we want to go back to our user profile. So this is just a quick tip for you. You can just run the command cd on its own and you can press enter. Okay, so now let me run the command pwd, and there we go. I have now landed back in my user profile just using cd. No matter where you are in the file system, this is automatically going to take you back to your user profile. Okay, so this is just a shortcut for your own reference. Go ahead and practice how to switch directories, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to list files and folders in the current directory that we are in. So unlike Windows, there's no graphical user interface for you to be able to see the contents of your folders. So for that, we need to run the command ls. But before we run that command, we can just run the command man ls. Take a look at the documentation that's related to this command. So quickly familiarize yourself with this and all the available options that you can use with this command. Okay, so now let's go back to the terminal by pressing Q. First, we are going to check which directory we are in. So let's run the pwd command. I am currently inside the documents directory. And now for me to be able to see the contents of this directory, I need to run the command ls. And there we go. This is going to output all the files and folders that I have in my documents directory. If you've noticed, at the moment, they all look the same to me. I don't know what is a file and what is a folder. I'm pretty sure that some of these are files and majority are folders. So for you to be able to distinguish between a file and a folder, we have the -l option that we can combine with the ls command. So let's run ls-l and make sure you add a space after the letter s. And let's run this. Here we get some extensive output. So let's quickly walk through it. So for you to be able to tell what is a file and what is a folder, you just need to take a look at the first character that you see here. If it begins with a D, this means that this is a directory or a folder. If the first character here begins with a hyphen instead, then this is a file. And after the hyphen or the D, this is followed by the permission that's been assigned to the file or the folder. And moving on, we have the owner of this file or folder and the group that owns this. And here is the size of the file or folder, followed by the last time that this file or folder was modified. And finally, we have the name of the file or folder. So let's clear the terminal by pressing Ctrl L. And now I'm going to switch to one of the folders that I have in my documents using the cd command. So cd Terraform Azure, and then let's quickly switch to the Key Vault folder. Don't worry about this folder and the contents of it. We are going to learn all about Terraform and how to create everything that you see in here in the upcoming modules. So now let's press enter and let's run the command ls-l. And as you can see, I have 3 files in here because they all begin with a hyphen. For you to be able to see hidden files inside a directory, you need to use the -a option, and you're also able to combine multiple options with this command. So let's run ls-l, which is what we learned previously. And now let's add the letter A to show us all the hidden files that we have in here. And once we run it, we get 3 more items in here. So the first item, this is a single dot, which means the current directory. Don't worry about it. We are going to learn about the different type of paths in Linux. Most importantly, we have a folder here, which is .git. And this is a hidden folder that I have in my current directory. And you typically get this folder once you initialize a folder and turn it into a Git repository. Again, don't worry about it. We are going to learn about Git and how to initialize new Git repositories in one of the upcoming modules. So this is all you need to know about the ls command. Go ahead and practice the ls command as we've seen in this lesson, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn about the different type of paths in Linux. So in the previous video, we briefly touched on this point. So I just wanted to dedicate a lesson. This is going to be important, not only when you're using Linux, but also when you start working with Terraform, CI/CD pipelines, or anytime you're writing scripts. So there's 2 types of paths. We have the full path and we have the relative path. The full path essentially means you're beginning from the root, followed by the folders that we have in root. So one of the folders that we have is users, and inside users we have my user profile, and inside my user profile I have documents, and inside my documents I would have files and folders until we get to the file or folder that we want to access. So this is the full path, and anytime you provide the full path, it means you're always going to land in the destination no matter where you are in the file system. Okay, and the way I typically like to think about the full path is you giving your home address to someone. So when you give your home address, you need to provide the door number, the street, the town, and the postcode, so that whoever has your address is always going to come to the right address no matter where they are. And you can use the full path anytime you run a command, whether it's the ls command or the cd command. Okay, and the other option is the relative path. And the relative path is basically dependent on where you are in the file system. So if I run the pwd command, I am inside Linux. Since I am inside Linux, I can use the relative path using either the dot or the double dot notation. Let's quickly cover the single dot notation. Let's say I want to see the contents of this directory here. I'm going to run the command ls followed by the dot notation. So if I press enter now, here we have the contents of the Linux directory. So the single dot notation essentially means look at the contents of the folder I'm in. And now if I want to see the contents of folder A, I would run the command ls dot / and then followed by the name of the folder. Okay, so this means inside Linux we have a folder here called folder A, and I want to list the contents of this folder. You see that we have the contents of folder A. Alternatively, if you want to go back the other way, as in you want to keep going back up towards the root directory, then you need to use the double dot notation. So if I run the command ls dot dot, it is going to show me the contents of the parent directory of Linux, and that is my user profile. So if I press enter now, we are currently looking at the contents of my user profile here. Let's say I want to go back up another level. So again, we just put a / because we are moving to another folder now. We need to pass another double dot notation. So if we press enter, I'm now able to see the contents of the user's directory. And you can just keep using the double dot notation depending on how deep you are in the file system. So since I'm currently in users, technically I only have one more level. So if I use the up arrow, add another double dot, it is going to show me the contents of the root, as you can see here. These are the different type of paths that we have, and this is going to help you going forward. So make sure you take a note of this and practice the different type of paths using the commands that we've learned so far, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to create folders in Linux. So let's get started. So the command that we use to create folders in Linux is the mkdir command. Let's quickly look at the documentation page for this command. So we are going to run man mkdir. So this is the manual page for it. So go ahead and quickly take a look at it in your own time. And now let's come out of it by pressing Q and let's clear the terminal. First of all, I'm going to run the command pwd just to check where I am. As you can see, I'm currently in the Linux directory. I'm going to create my new folder inside this directory. So what I'm going to do is run the command mkdir space, and now I need to provide the name of the folder that I want to create. You can call the folder whatever you want and then press enter. So I already have something that is called Terraform, so I can't really call it Terraform. So I'm just going to press the up arrow and I'm just going to call it something else and press enter. And now let's run the command ls to see what we have. Here I have a folder called Cloud School. So to verify, I'm going to run the command ls-l. And if we take a look at Cloud School, we know that this is a directory because it begins with a D. Awesome. We've created a single folder and that works as expected. Now, suppose that we want to create multiple folders. So again, we can use the mkdir to do that. But first, let's switch to the Cloud School folder that we just created. And now let's run the command mkdir. Let's call the first folder UAT, and then space, and then the second folder I want to call it dev, and finally the third folder I want to call it prod. You can call the folders wherever you want and then press enter. Now let's run the command ls to see the contents of Cloud School, and there we go. We have 3 folders in here: dev, prod and UAT. We've seen how to create a single folder and we've seen how to create 3 separate folders. Finally, let's see how to create a nested folder. So we are going to create a folder, and then we are going to create a folder inside that folder, and then a file inside the subfolder. So we are going to use mkdir again, and we are going to create a folder here called scripts. Inside the scripts folder, we want to create another folder called PowerShell, and inside PowerShell, we want to create a PowerShell file, and we are going to call it example.ps1. And this is the file extension for PowerShell. As soon as we press enter, we get this error message. The reason why we are getting this error is because we are missing the argument that we need to use with the mkdir command anytime we are creating a nested folder structure like this. So let's just press the up arrow, and now let's go to the beginning. So if you just hold option and the left arrow, you can just jump between each word. And now just before scripts, we are going to add -p. Now let's press enter. So that seems to have worked. Now let's run the command ls. So we now have a folder here called scripts. Let's take a look at the content of scripts by running the command ls, and let's use the dot notation / and the name of the folder. And now let's press tab to see what's inside scripts. Okay, so we seem to have a folder here called PowerShell, And finally, let's press tab again one more time. And there we go. Inside PowerShell, we have the example.ps1. So this is how you can use the mkdir command to create a single folder, multiple folders, and nested folders. Go ahead and practice the command, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to read the contents of a file using the cat command. So let's run the command man followed by cat. And now let's press enter. So here's the manual page for the cat command, which stands for concatenate and print files. Anytime you have text in a file and you want to read the contents of that, you can use this command. So let's see how it works. To begin with, let's check where we are. So I'm in my user profile. And now I want to switch to the Linux directory. So I'm going to run the command cd Linux and then press enter. So now let's run the command ls to see what we have inside Linux. And here's the contents of the Linux directory. Let's verify what is a file and what is a folder by running the command ls-g. Okay, so I've got 4 files in here. And now let's try and read the contents of one of those files. So we are going to run the command cat followed by the name of the file that we want to read. So let's see what is inside file 4 and press enter. File 4 is currently empty. So if your file is empty, obviously you're not going to get any output. Now let's try file 3. So cat file 3. Now this shows us the contents of file 3, which is what I have inside this file. Now suppose you don't have a file. Let's say you want to create a file and you want to enter a text into that file. We can run the command echo. So this is another command which we haven't learnt about. So if you run the echo command on its own like this, so echo hello, this is just going to output the text that's in between quotes into the terminal. But instead of outputting it into the terminal, we want to write it into a file. If you already ran the command touch to create your file like this, so touch file 5. If we run this command now, this is going to create us an empty file. So if we try to read the contents of file 5, this is not going to output anything because it's empty. Let's use the echo command and write the text that we see there into file 5. So again, we are going to write echo and then in quotes, the text that we want to output. And now instead of outputting it into the terminal, we are going to use this symbol here, the greater symbol, and we are going to redirect the text to our file. So file 5 and then press enter. Okay, now let's clear the terminal and let's try and read the contents of the file 5 by running cat file 5. And there we go. Now inside the file, we have the text hello. Awesome. So we've seen how to create a file and we've seen how to redirect a text into the file. Now let's say we have multiple files in here and we want to read the contents of all of those files in one go instead of one file at a time. Again, we just use the cat command followed by the name of the file. So the first file is going to be file 5. And let's say we also want to read file 3. Let's press enter. The first line here shows us the contents of file 5. And the second line is the contents of file 3. Finally, if you want to take the contents of these 2 files and then write it into a brand new file, what we can do is say cat file 5 and file 3, and then again use the greater than sign. And here you just pass the name of the file that you want to redirect the contents of these 2 files to. So I'm going to create another file here called file 6. If the file doesn't exist, then this is going to also create the file. So let's try and run this command. Now let's see what we have inside our directory by running ls. And there we go. We now have file 6. And now if we try and read the contents of file 6, here we have the contents of file 6. Hello, this is file 1, this is file 2. There you go. This is how you can use the cat command to read the contents of a file. Go ahead and practice the usage of this command and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to delete directories using the rmdir command. So to begin with, let's check the manual page for this. So man rmdir, and this is a command that's used to remove directories as you see. And one important note is that this command only works with directories that are empty. So if the directory you're trying to delete is not empty, then it wouldn't work. So as per usual, let's check where we are. So I'm back at my user profile. Now I'm going to switch to my Linux directory. Let's see what I have in here. So these are the files and folders that I have in my Linux directory. So I'm going to run ls-g. I have a couple of folders in here which I can delete. Okay, one of the folders that we created previously was the Cloud School one, and this has subfolders in there. Instead of going to every folder and then running the command ls to see what's inside that folder, you can also run the ls-r command from here against the folder that you want to take a look at, which is, for example, Cloud School. And this is going to show us all the contents that we have in there. So the folder Cloud School has the following subfolders in there. Some of them are empty, some of them are not. So dev, prod are empty. However, scripts has another subfolder in there called PowerShell, and PowerShell has the file example.ps1. The command only works for empty directories. So if we try and use the rmdir command on those folders which contain subfolders and files, then the command is going to fail, and we're going to take a look at it shortly. So let's switch to the Cloud School directory first, and let's try and delete some of the empty directories. So we are going to run the command rmdir followed by the empty directory. So let's begin with dev. Okay, now let's run the command ls in here. As you can see, dev is no longer here. Now we are left with prod and uat. We can also delete multiple folders using the same command. So we are going to pass the name of the first folder followed by the name of the second empty folder, and now press enter. Now let's run the ls command. As you can see, we are left with scripts. Now let's try and delete the folder scripts and see what happens. Okay, there you go. We get this error message, directory not empty. And this confirms the fact that the rmdir command only works with empty directories. So if you want to delete directories which are not empty, then we need to use another command for that, which I'm going to show you in the next video. Go ahead and practice the rmdir command, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to take a look at how to delete directories which contain subfolders or files in them using the rm command. So let's take a look at the manual page by running man rm, and this is the command that we use to remove directory entries. So with this command, we have a couple of important options that we need to use with it. So the first one is the -i. So to be on the safer side, you should always use the -i. And this is basically going to prompt you for confirmation every time before you delete a folder. The other one is going to be the -r, which is basically going to remove the file hierarchy in each file argument. And finally, we have the -f, which is basically going to force delete all the files that you have. Because sometimes you can have some stubborn files that you cannot delete using the rm command on its own. So you need to force delete it using the -f option. When you use the -f option on its own, you're not going to be prompted and the file is going to be deleted automatically. So to be safer, just combine it with the -i option. Now let's take a look at how this command works. I'm still inside my Cloud School folder. Here I have the scripts directory, which has another subfolder in there. So let's try and delete the scripts folder using the rm command. So rm followed by the name of the folder, scripts. Let's try this command. Now this tells us that scripts is a directory, which means that we need to pass the options we just took a look at in the manual page. So let's clear the terminal and let's run the command rm hyphen. The first one is going to be r, which is going to allow the rm command to go through the folder hierarchy. Now let's pass the name of the folder. So let's run the command ls, and there you go. We no longer have the scripts directory in here. So sometimes if you have a folder that you cannot delete, then you need to add the -f option to forcefully delete that file or folder. This command can be used to delete files and folders. So if we go back one level and let's see what we have in here. So we have a lot of files. So let's try and delete file 3, 4, 5, and 6 using the rm command. So to begin with, I'm just going to try it out with file 3. Okay, that's gone. We no longer see file 3. So let's try and delete multiple files. Okay, so I'm going to delete file 4, file 5, and file 6 using the rm command. And because these are just files, I don't need to pass any options in here. Okay, now let's run ls, and there you go. We don't have any of those files anymore. Now, if you want to be prompted before the deletion of each folder, then you can use the -i option. So let's try rm -i followed by the name of the folder that we want to delete. So this is saying that this is a directory, so we need to pass the -r with it. So the first thing, it is going to ask for permission, whether it can examine for files in the directory Cloud School. And I'm just going to type in yes. And the next thing is, it is going to prompt you, do you want to remove Cloud School folder? Again, you can either go ahead or abort the deletion. I'm going to type in yes. Now let's run ls. We no longer have the Cloud School folder. Finally, if you want, you can combine all of the options that we just seen. So R, I, and F, and this is going to forcefully delete, and it's also going to prompt you for confirmation, as we've seen. Okay, so this is how you can use the rm command to delete non-empty directories and files. So go ahead and practice the command, and make sure to always be safe and just include the -i, just in case you are about to delete an important folder. So this is going to be another safety net for you before you confirm the deletion. That's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to copy files and folders in Linux. So to copy files and folders, we need to use the cp command. And let's quickly take a look at the manual page for this. So the cp command stands for copy files, and you can use this to copy files and folders. Let's quickly take a look at how to use the command. So I am inside my Linux directory. I have the following files and folders. So let's just confirm what is a file and what is a folder again by running ls-g. So I have a couple of files in here, as you can see. Let's try and make a copy of one of the files that we have in here. So we are going to run the command cp followed by the name of the file that we want to copy. So let's say I want to copy this file here, file1_backup. Now we need to pass in the destination. Let's say I just want to make another copy here, and I want to rename the file to something else. So I'm going to pass in the name of the new file. So I'm just going to call it file2, and now press enter. Now let's run the command ls to see what we have in here. So as you can see, I have file2. So let's try and read the content of file2 now, cat file2. And this is the content of file2. So now we've seen how to make a copy of a file to our current directory. So suppose we want to make a copy to another directory, we can run the command cp followed by the name of the file that we want to copy. So let's just say file2, and we want to copy file2 now to our user profile. So we just pass in the tilde sign like this. Let's press enter, and now let's see what we have. As you can see, file2 is still here. Let's see the content of our user profile by running the command ls tilde sign. Here we have file2, and let's see the content of that file by running cat, the tilde sign, followed by / followed by file2. Okay, and this is the content of file2 in the user profile. Awesome. So we've seen how to copy files from one directory to another. And finally, let's see how to copy directories. Again, it's just the same concept. We run the command cp, and in here I have a folder called Terraform, and now I need to define the destination. So again, the destination can be the current folder or another folder. So if I want to copy it to this folder and rename it to something else, I can just call it Terraform_backup and press enter. So we get this message, Terraform is a directory and this has not been copied. So if we run the command ls, we do not see the Terraform_backup directory. So for that, we need to pass in the -r, just like we learned in the previous lesson with the rm command. So let's try the command cp -r like this. And now let's pass in the folder that we want to copy. Use tab to autocomplete. We want to name it something else. So Terraform_backup and press enter. Now let's run the ls command. And there you go. We now have the Terraform_backup. And if we try and list the contents of Terraform_backup, you can see that this is currently empty as we do not have anything in here. Let's see how to copy the folder from the current directory and just make a backup of it in our user profile. So we are going to run the command cp followed by -r followed by the name of the folder that you want to copy. And we want to copy this to the user profile. So I'm just going to pass tilde sign. If you want to rename it to something else, then feel free to just pass in the name here like this if you want to. Alternatively, you can just leave as it is, and it is going to create a new folder in there called Terraform. So let's run the command. And now let's see the contents of our user profile. And there you go. We have the Terraform directory in here, which should be empty. So let's run ls tilde sign, and then let's take a look at inside Terraform. And there you go. This is empty. So go ahead and practice the cp command to copy files and folders and try to use all the variations that we did in this video. And I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to edit files in Linux. So back in the previous module, we've seen how to use Visual Studio Code to open the editor and edit our files in the editor like this. So if you've been wondering how to do the same thing in Linux, then rest assured that we have two options. So the Vim option is a more advanced utility compared to the other option, Nano. So in this video, we are going to take a look at the basic things that you need to know about Vim in order to edit files in the terminal effectively. And in the next video, I'm going to cover the Nano text editor. So before we begin with Vim, I just want to show you the Vim tutorial that you can find within your terminal, something that you can use as a reference going forward. So if you just type Vim tutor and press enter here, this is going to bring up the Vim tutor. And this is just a guide to help you go through and show you all the options that you can use with Vim. So go ahead and take a look at this in your own time. But for now, let me just show you the basic things that you need. So to come out of this window now, press colon and then Q. So Vim is a text editor and you use Vim to edit text files. So let's quickly open one of the files that we have in here and edit it. So to edit a file using Vim, you need to start with Vim followed by the file that you want to edit. If the file name that you specify in the command doesn't exist already in the current directory, then Vim is going to create that file for you. However, if the file exists already, like file 2 here, then Vim is just going to open that existing file. So if we run this command, this is the first window that you see. So by default, you are going to be in normal mode. And normal mode essentially means that you can't type anything on your keyboard. As you can see, I'm trying to press B and N, nothing is happening. So for you to be able to insert text into this file, you can press the I key. And as soon as you press I on your keyboard, you can see that the mode has now changed into insert mode, which means that we should now be able to just type anything that we want in here. If you want to come out of insert mode, as in you don't want to enter any text, you need to press the escape key. Okay, we are now back in normal mode. If you want to navigate around, move around the text that you have in here, you can just use your left and right arrows. Alternatively, you can use the H, J, K, L keys to move around and do exactly what the arrows do. If your cursor is all the way here and you want to go to the beginning of the line, you can just press 0 on your keyboard. And this is going to take you to the beginning of the line. Similarly, if you want to go to the end of the line, hold Shift and the $sign, and this is going to take you all the way to the end of the line. So let's insert some text in here. So I'm going to go to a new line and I'm going to add in some dummy text. So I've got 4 lines in total and I want to be able to go to the beginning of the file now. So to do so, I'm going to press the escape key to go into normal mode so that I can run the commands. And now to go to the top of the file, I'm going to press G twice. And there you go. This has taken me all the way to the top. And if you want to go all the way to the end of the file, you go to the end using capital G. And this takes you all the way to the end of the file. Now, if you want to see the line numbers inside Vim, you need to use the following command. So colon, followed by the word set, followed by the word number like this, and make sure you separate them with a space and then press enter. And now our lines are numbered so that we know which line we are on. And now if you want to move to a specific line, then you can press colon and the line number that you want the cursor to go on. So let's say we want to go to line 3. We just pass the number 3 here and then press enter. And you can see the cursor automatically moves to line number 3. And if you want to disable the numbers, you need to run the command colon followed by set and then no number. And this is going to take away the numbers and the file is going to go back to as it was previously. So normally we typically want to delete a line or a text. If you want to delete a text, you just go to insert mode and then delete the text using the backspace, as you know. But let's say you want to delete the whole line, then you go back to normal mode and then press D twice. So double D, and that gets rid of the line where the cursor was on. So now the cursor is on the third line or the word here. So if we want to delete this line as well, then we press D twice. And there we go, that is gone. Now, sometimes you have a large file and you want to search for a specific text. So there's two ways to search for a text. You can either search for it going forward, depending on where your cursor is on, or you can search for it backwards. So because the cursor now is at the top of the file or on line number 1, and there's nothing above me, so I need to search forward. So I need to run the command / followed by the text that I want to search for. So let's just say I want to search for file and then press enter. As you can see, the cursor is now on the letter F where the word file appears. So let's say we want to go backwards now. Then to go backwards, as in go towards this, we use the question mark followed by the text that we want to search for backwards. The text that we can search for now is this or is. So let's search for this. And there you go. The cursor moves all the way to the letter T where it finds the word this. So in Visual Studio Code, we've seen how to find and replace. Similarly, we can do the same thing in here. So for us to find and replace a text, then we need to run the command $%S and now /. So let's say we want to replace the word dummy followed by /, and now we need to define the new word that we want to replace dummy with. We put another / and then the word G. So this is going to find all the occurrences of the word dummy in our file, and it is going to replace it with smart. Now, if we press enter, there you go. Dummy is now being replaced with smart. Now, if you want to be prompted for a confirmation before you change every word, then we just do the same thing. So $%S /, and now let's replace smart with something else like this, and G followed by C. Now let's press enter, and there you go. Now we are getting prompted. Do you want to replace with Cloud School? You can just press Y to confirm this has now been replaced with Cloud School. Okay. Let's say you make all the changes and then you decide, okay, you don't actually want to apply the changes and you want to abandon it. Then you need to use Q and then exclamation mark. If you run this command now, this is not going to save any of the changes and file 2 is going to go back to as it was before. Run this. And now if we go back to file 2, as you can see, file 2 is back to as it was previously. We make a change and now we want to save the changes. We go back to normal mode and then $WQ, and this is going to exit and save the file. And now if we run the vim file 2 again, there you go. The changes that we just made has now been saved. And this is how you use Vim. And it's very important as a cloud engineer that you become familiar with Vim or Nano as your text editor in the terminal, because there's going to be a time where you need to edit text and you need to use one of these tools. Vim is rather advanced compared to Nano, which we are going to take a look at in the next video. So go ahead and practice all the commands that we've seen in this video, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to take a look at the Nano text editor, which is another option which you can use besides Vim. So just like Vim, if you want to edit your file with Nano, you need to start with the word Nano followed by the file that you want to edit. Again, same thing. If the file that you are opening doesn't exist, then Nano is going to create that file for you. However, if the file exists already, then it is just going to open that file. Let's press enter. I already have file 2 from before, and here is the Nano text editor. As soon as you get into the text editor, you can just start typing, as you can see. So there's no insert or normal mode in Nano. Now let's just take a look at some of the things that you can do within here that are going to be helpful for you. So to begin with, you've got all the options that you see at the bottom here as a guide. This sign that you see here, it means control on your keyboard. So for example, if we want to exit Nano, then we press Ctrl X and then we get prompted for this. Do you want to save your changes? You can either press Y to save your changes or N to discard it. So let's press Y. We get prompted to update the file name if we want to. Alternatively, you can just press enter to continue and keep the existing file name. Now let's run Nano file 2 again. And we are back in Nano. And as you can see, the changes that we made are now saved. Another useful thing for you to know is if you want to delete text, you can just use the backspace on your keyboard, as you can see. And if you want to now cut a line, you can use Ctrl K. And if you want to paste the line that you just cut, you can do Ctrl U. Okay. To navigate around, you can just use your arrow keys like this, left, right. And if you have multiple lines, you can just go up and down as well. Now, if you want to search for a text in your file, you can press Ctrl W. And in this box here, search for the word that you're looking for in your file and press enter. And just like with Vim, the cursor is going to go on the first letter of that word. And if you want to find and replace, then you need to press Ctrl// if you are using Ubuntu. However, if you're using a Mac, Ctrl// isn't going to work for you and you're going to get this message. So to overcome this, just press Ctrl W and then Ctrl R again. Now you can search for the word that you're looking for. And now press enter. And now you get prompted to choose what you want to replace the word file with. And then press enter. And there you go, file has now been replaced with hello. And if you want to copy a text, you can just go to the line and then highlight the text and then click on copy. And then go to a new line and press Ctrl V to paste what you just copied. And if you want to get more help, you can press Ctrl G. And this is just a quick guide to help you. And if you want to go to the next page, you need to press Ctrl V to go to the next page. And if you want to go to the previous page, then Ctrl Y. So this is another option that you can use just to help you around. But Nano is way easier to use compared to Vim. As long as you know one of them, then you are okay. And if you know both of them, that's even better. That's it for this video. Go ahead and practice using Nano as well as Vim, and I will see you in the next one. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to use the sudo and su commands to manage privileges in Ubuntu. If you are going to be logging on to a VM in the cloud, you need to be able to install stuff. So as a standard user, you are typically not allowed to install things without elevating your privileges. The first thing that we have in Linux is the root account, and the root account is the most powerful account in the Linux OS. And this has unrestricted access to all the commands and files. While this might sound convenient, it also makes the root account a high risk account because any mistakes that you make can cause a lot of damages. So in Ubuntu, typically the root account doesn't have a password set by default, which effectively disables direct logins. And this is a deliberate security measure to encourage the use of sudo instead. So sudo stands for super user do, and this is what allows a permitted user to execute commands with elevated privileges. This is important because many admin tasks that you need to do, such as installing software, modifying system files, need super user rights. And in Ubuntu, sudo is the preferred method over directly using the root account. Now, to use sudo, the user has to be a member of the sudo group, and you can check if your user is part of this group by running the command groups who am I. So let's quickly do that here. So run groups $, open parenthesis, who am I, and then close parenthesis. And if you run this, this is going to show you all the groups that your user account is currently a member of. And this command should also work if you are following along on your Mac. And the only difference is that your user account is going to be a member of admin if you're on a Mac. However, on Ubuntu, it should say sudo, as you can see here. Now, if the user isn't in the sudo group, you can add it using this command, sudo usermod -ag, and then sudo followed by the username. So let's say I have a username called Cloud School on this OS, and then press enter. And now I need to provide the admin password for my account. So this user now needs to log out and log back in for the changes to take effect. But since I already have this account in the sudo group, nothing should really change. So now since we have sudo permissions, we should be able to execute any admin related tasks. So let's say we try and create a file in the etc directory, which is something that a standard user isn't able to. So let's say touch/etc and then the name of the file. Let's just call it test. And you see we get permission denied. So we need to elevate our privileges by adding sudo followed by the same command again, and then press enter. And there you go, we were not prompted for a password because our password was already cached. So now if we look at the contents of the etc directory by running ls/etc, this is going to show us the test file that we just created, as you can see here. Anytime you want to install things or anytime you want to update your OS, which we are going to take a look at in the upcoming lessons, you need to start with the sudo command and then followed by the command that you want to execute. Now, moving on, we also have the SU command, and this stands for switch user. And this is what allows you to switch to another user account. And by default, it switches to the root account if you don't provide a username. So if we run the command SU like this, it prompts us for the root account password for us to switch to the root user. So let me press Ctrl C to come out of it. And you should also use the hyphen option like this, SU hyphen followed by the account that you want to switch to. And this is going to modify the SU behavior to simulate a full login shell for the user that you just mentioned. And this is going to load the target user's environment variables. So if this user has environment variables in their account, you're going to have access to those. I know we haven't talked about environment variables, but for example, we have an environment variable called path, and this is the environment variable that we have in this account. Okay, and it also changes your working directory to the target user's home directory. But since I only have one account in this VM, that's why I can't really demonstrate it. But when you run this command on a system that has multiple users, you'll be able to see the difference. Finally, I just wanted to make you aware of the sudoers file. So this is the file that has all the configuration that determines which users have sudo privileges and what commands they can run. So if you want to edit this file, you need to basically use the vi sudo command like this. Sudo vi sudo. And this is going to start editing the sudoers file, which is typically found in the etc directory. So if we run this, this is the sudoers file. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see here we have this note, allow members of group sudo to execute any command. And this is the sudo group, and this group is allowed to run any command on the system. As long as you are part of this group, you should be able to execute any commands. Typically, this is not a file that we would edit, but this is just for your own reference in case if you ever need to. So this is all I wanted to cover in this video. The sudo command anytime you want to elevate your privileges to install anything, and the su command to switch user in case you're logged on as a standard user and you want to run commands as another user. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, I'm going to show you how to move files and folders using the mv command. So the mv command is used to move both files and folders, as well as rename files and folders. So it has a dual purpose. Now let's take a look at how it works. I'm currently in my Linux directory, and let me list all the files and folders that I have in here. And I'm going to run ls-g just to make sure what is a file and what is a folder. So first we are going to rename a file and then move it. And then we are going to do the same thing for a folder. So I want to rename file2 to something else. I'm going to run the command mv followed by the name of the file that I want to rename. So file2. And now I need to pass in the new name. So I'm just going to call it new_file. Now if I run the command ls, as you can see, I don't have file2 anymore. And this has now been renamed to new file. And now let's see how to move the file from here to one of the directories that we have. So again, mv followed by the file that we want to move, so new file. And now the destination of where you want to move it. So I want to move it to inside Terraform, and make sure you follow it up with a / because this is a directory. And now press enter. So let's run the command ls now. As you can see, I do not have new file here anymore. And if I take a look at the contents of the directory Terraform, new file has now been moved to inside Terraform. So we've seen how to work with files, whether to rename them or move them. The same concept applies for folders. So let's take a look at how it works. I want to rename the Terraform directory to something else. So again, just run the command mv Terraform and now pass in the new name. Now, if we run the command ls, you see that Terraform has now been renamed to new Terraform. Awesome. So finally, to move the folder, we run the command mv followed by the name of the folder that you want to move. And now to move it to somewhere else, for example, the parent directory of Linux, I just pass in ... and this should move it to the parent directory. So if I run ls, you can see new Terraform is no longer here. And if I run ls ... it has now been moved to the root of my user profile. So there you go. This is how you use the mv command to work with files and folders. So anytime you want to move or rename a file or a folder, just use the mv command. So now go ahead and practice this command, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn how to use the package manager in Linux to install stuff on our VM. So typically when you log on to Ubuntu machine or a Linux, you need to be installing packages. And in Linux, we have what is called a package manager, which is just a tool that is going to simplify the process of installing, updating, and managing software on your system. Now, every distribution has a different package manager. So for example, Ubuntu uses what is called apt as the package manager by working with online repositories that store the software packages that you want to install. And this is basically pre-compiled apps and their dependencies. So here are some key terminologies that you might want to remember just to make it easier for you. Packages are just software or tools that you want to install. Repositories are online locations where packages are stored. And finally, some packages require some dependencies. So these are just other software libraries or tools that the package needs in order to work. So when you use a package manager, all you need to do is just run a command, and that is going to fetch the package and all the required dependencies. So first, before you do anything with the package manager, you need to update the list of available packages by running the following command. So sudo apt update, and this is going to refresh the list of the available packages that we have on our system. And now we need to provide our admin password. And of course, it goes without saying that this is only going to work on a Ubuntu, and you must have an internet connection for you to be able to run this command. Otherwise, you won't be able to update or upgrade anything. We've updated the packages and we've got 74 packages that can be upgraded. Now to upgrade the packages that you see here, we need to run the command sudo apt upgrade. And this is going to upgrade all the packages, and now we need to confirm by pressing Y. So the upgrade is now completed, and now all the packages that were pre-installed on our system have been upgraded to the latest available packages. So now let's say we want to search for a specific package. So one of the typical things that we do is install web servers on the Linux VMs. So one of the web servers that you can install on the Ubuntu machine is called Nginx. So you can just type apt search and then the name of the package. And this is going to return a list of packages related to Nginx along with, a brief description. Also, you can run the command apt show, then the name of the package. You can see at the bottom, we have a description which shows us that this is a small, powerful, and scalable web proxy server. So let's say we want to install this now. We need to run the command apt install and then the name of the package. So we are going to install the Nginx web server, and now let's press enter. As you can see, we get permission denied, and that is because we haven't elevated our privileges using sudo. So let's do that. And now let's press enter. If you don't want to keep getting prompted, you can always add a -y after the command. So let me press Ctrl C to come out of this. And if I put -y here, this is not going to prompt you for any confirmation, and it is just going to go ahead with the installation. So let's try running this. And there you go. We have now installed Nginx. And now to check the web server that you just installed, you can run the command curl localhost. This is going to return the Nginx web server that you just installed. So this is just another way of browsing a website by using the curl command. So as you can see, this is the web server that we installed. Welcome to Nginx. If you were using a web browser, then you'll be able to see this in the browser. And now if you wanted to remove Nginx, you can run the command sudo apt remove, then the name of the package. And now let's confirm. And if we try running the curl command again, you can see that we are unable to do it because we have installed the web server. So this was just a quick overview on the package managers and how you can use them to install stuff on your server. So go ahead and play with this, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn about processes and services. So let's quickly talk about what is a process. So anytime you open an application that you are interacting with, whether it is Visual Studio Code, your web browser, the terminal, that is going to create a new process for you on your system. So the minute you close that application, then the process is going to be terminated. So typically when we log on to a virtual machine in the cloud, we want to be able to see all the processes that are running. And for us to be able to see the processes, we run the command ps-aux. This is going to show us all the processes that are currently running. And as you can see at the moment, I have a lot of processes. So if you want to be able to scroll up and down, since we can't use our mouse to scroll up and down, we need to use a specific command for that. So we are going to run the same command, psaux, and we are going to get the same output. But now we want to take this output and use it with another command. So in order to do that, we need to use the pipe sign. So when you use the pipe sign, it means take the output from the first command and do something else with it. So now we are going to pass the output from the first command over to the next command, which is called less. And this command is going to allow us to basically scroll up and down the output, either one line at a time or one page up or down, using the page up or page down keys on your keyboard. So coming back to the psaux output, the first column shows us under which user the process is running under, followed by the PID number. So every process gets a unique ID number so that you are able to identify the process using the ID. In the far end, we have the command, which is basically the name of the process. But let's come out of this by pressing Q on your keyboard, and let's clear the terminal. So previously we've seen how to install Nginx on our VM. So let's quickly go and reinstall it. So run sudo apt install Nginx. And now we need to provide the admin password, and let's confirm. So Nginx has been installed, and this should be running as a process. So for us to be able to see this, we are going to basically run the same command, psaux, but instead of just seeing the list of all the processes, we want to just grab the specific process that we are interested in. And for that, there is a specific command that you can use to search for a string in an output. So since psaux is going to output all of the processes, we want to grab and search for a specific string or text, and that string is going to be Nginx using the grep command. Okay, let's press enter here, and this is going to show us all the stuff that are related to Nginx, as you can see here. We have a couple of processes here for Nginx. We have the master process and we have the worker process. So the master process is responsible for managing the worker processes. So whether it's reloading configuration and restarting the worker processes if needed. Whereas the worker processes, so these handle the HTTP requests that we receive on our web server. So we've seen the process is currently running, all good. So let's try and access our web server by running the command curl localhost. Our web server is currently accessible, and the worker process is processing our requests. Awesome. Now, how do we kill this process if we want to? So we need to grab the ID number of the process, so 1970, and we need to kill the master process since this is the master process. So for this, we run the command sudo kill, followed by the PID number of the master process, so 1970. If we run this now, this should kill the Nginx process, which means our HTTP requests are not going to be processed anymore. So let's try and confirm this by running the command curl localhost. And there you go, we have now failed to connect to the localhost on port 80. We've seen how to list the processes and how to stop them. So now let's take a look at services. So unlike a process, which is basically run anytime you open an application and is something that you can interact with, a service is just something that you typically are not able to interact with, and it just runs in the background. So the service is typically used for when you have something that is continuously running. So for example, a web server should always be continuously running because you never know when a request is going to come in. So this is why it is always required to be running in the background. Since we installed Nginx using the apt package manager, this is automatically running in the background, and anytime you reboot your system, the service is always going to start automatically. So now let's check the service, and to do that, we run the command systemctl, followed by list-units, followed by --type, and now we want to list all the services that we have, so let's run this command. So as you can see here, we have a lot of services. Some of them are running and some of them are exited. So for example, if the Nginx service is in an exited state, that means we won't be able to browse to our web server on this server. Again, since we have a lot of services here, we want to narrow down our search. So let's press Q and let's clear the terminal. So again, using the systemctl command, we are going to use status to check the status of a specific service. So the service that we are interested in is Nginx. So we pass the name of the package and let's run this command. The state of this service is currently inactive, which means it is in a stopped or dead state. And we shouldn't be able to browse to our web server since the service is down. If we want to start this service, we need to run the command systemctl start nginx, and this should hopefully start the service for us. So let's pass in our admin password and press enter. Okay, authentication completed. And now let's see the status of the Nginx service again. The service is now up and running since we started it. So all looking good. And now let's try and access our web server using curl localhost again. There you go, the service is now back up and running. Finally, if you want to be able to stop the service, we use the systemctl command again. So instead of status, we use stop. So systemctl stop, the name of the package. Now let's run this. Again, we need to pass in our admin password. And as you can see, we are currently unable to access the web server. Awesome. So go ahead and practice all the commands that we discussed in this video, and I will see you in the next one. So in the upcoming lessons, we are going to learn about the file permissions and how to change the file permissions. So for me to be able to show that properly, we need to have some users and groups in place. So in this lesson, I just want to show you how to create users and groups, even though this is something that you don't typically need to do. But it's just good for you to know how it is done, and it's going to be important for when we move on to the next part either way. So I might as well just show you how it's done. First, we are going to take a look at how to create users and then groups. So if you want to find out all the current users on your Linux OS, you need to read the contents of this file. So this file here is going to contain all of the current users on our system. And as you can see, I am all the way at the bottom here, Cloud School. Another quick tip for you, if you don't want to see this output, just in case, something that you can use is the cut command. We use this command if we want to just see a specific section of the output. So as you saw, the first output, we had a lot of text in there. And if we want to just see the users instead of all the other stuff, we can use this command. So we use the command cut followed by -d, and -d is used for the delimiter. So if we go back to the same file, you can see that after every command, we have a delimiter or a separator, which in this case is a colon. So because of that, we want to set the delimiter, as in the separator, to what the file uses, which is colon. Now we need to pass in which field we want to take a look at, because there was different sections in that output. So we use the -f followed by which section. So the username was in the first section. So we pass in the number 1. And now we need to pass in the file that we want to read, etc pass wd. And as you can see, this is just going to show us the output that we are actually interested in. So this command is useful. You can use it for many things. So just keep it in your arsenal. So we see that we have the following users. And now let's say we want to create a new user account. So we use the command sudo add user followed by the name of the user, example, and now press enter. And now we are going to be prompted for our admin password. So enter your password and press enter. We are getting prompted to set a password for this new user account. So go ahead and set the password and retype it again. And now we are getting prompted to set the name of this user. Let's just say example. We don't need to worry about the room number. So just press enter, enter. Press Y to confirm. There we go. We've now created the account. So let's take a look at the passwd file. And as you can see all the way at the bottom, we have the example user account. Awesome. Now let's move on to the groups. So again, you can check all the groups that exist on this machine by running the same command. So instead of passwd, we just change it to group. And this is going to show us all of the groups that exist. And now let's see how to create a new group. So we run the command sudo group add followed by the group. So let's just call it engineers and now press enter. So let's take a look at the group file again. And as you can see all the way at the bottom, we have the engineers group. And now let's see how to add a user to a group. So we are going to take the example user that we created and we are going to add that user to the engineers group that we just created now. So first, before we do that, we can check the groups that the user is a member of by running the command groups followed by the name of the user account. And this is going to tell us that this user is member of example and users. run the command sudo user mod -a, and this is important because we want to add this user to this group and not remove it from the other groups, followed by capital G. And now we need to pass in the group. So we want to add this to the engineers group, followed by the name of the user that we are trying to add to the engineers group, which is called example. So we've run the command and that seems to have worked now. Run the command groups example again. And as you can see, this user is now a member of the engineers group. Awesome. And finally, going back to the su command that we talked about previously, if you want to switch to this user account environment, then you can use the command sudo su hyphen followed by the name of the user, example. And as you can see, we are now running this shell as the example user account. And if we run the command who am I, this is going to return the user account that we are currently using the shell under. So I wasn't able to demonstrate this previously, but there you go. We have now seen how to switch shells to another account. In the next video, we are going to learn about the file permissions. So I'll see you there. Okay, so in this lesson, we are going to talk about the Linux file system permissions and how we can control that. So permissions in Linux are going to be assigned to 3 different categories of users. One is the owner, i.e. user, and this is typically the person that created the file. So you can also assign permission to group, which is basically a set of users who share access rights to the file. And finally, others, which is all other users who are not the owner or part of the group. Permissions determine whether users can read the contents of a file or list directory contents, write, as in modify the contents of a file or directory, and finally execute, which is going to allow you to execute or run a script file, or if working with a directory, then enter that directory using the cd command. Now permissions can be displayed in 2 main formats, symbolic and octal. So let's start with the symbolic mode. A typical permission string looks like this, and each section that you see here represents permissions for the owner, the group, and others. The R stands for read, the W stands for write, and the X stands for execute, and finally the hyphen, that means no permission. So we use the command chmod to modify permissions. For symbolic mode, we need to specify the category, U, G, O, and the operation, which is plus, minus, and equals. So the U stands for the user or the owner, the G stands for group, and the O stands for others. And in terms of the operations, you can use the plus, which is to add permission. You can use minus to remove permission, and equals, which is to set specific permission. So let's take a look at some examples. I'm still using the example account. So I want to come out of this by typing exit. And now I'm back in my Cloud School account. So first, let's double check where we are. So I'm currently in my home directory. I'm going to create a file in here called symmode. And to see the permissions, we need to run the command ls-l, the hyphen, which as we know is what determines whether this is a file or a folder, followed by the permission. So the first 3 elements are going to be affecting the user or the owner of this file. The next 3 elements are going to affect the group, and the final 3 elements are going to affect the others. We are going to use the chmod command to update each part of those elements. We can either update the permissions for the user on its own, the group on its own, or the others on its own. Alternatively, you can combine them all. So let's take a look at how that works. So we are going to run the command chmod. So let's begin with the user example. So because we want to affect or apply the changes to the user, we use the letter U. And now to add or remove the permissions, we can either use the plus if we are adding permissions, or we can use the minus to remove the permissions. So we know the owner currently has the read write permission and it doesn't have execute. So let's go ahead and add the execute permission. So we are going to use the plus followed by X, which is going to be for execute. And now we need to pass in the name of the file that we want to update, which is symmode or whatever file you created. Now let's run the command ls-l. The permissions for the owner or the user has now updated to read, write, and execute. So there's an X there now. The owner, you can see this is the first element here, Cloud School. And every time you create a user account, a group is also created by default. This group is also added to the file. So the group Cloud School now contains the user Cloud School. So this group currently has the read and write permissions to this file. So let's remove the write permission by running the command chmod. And because we are working with the group, we want to use the letter G. And now let's remove using the minus sign. And what are we trying to remove? We are trying to remove the write permission, which is represented by the letter W, followed by the file name. And now let's run the command ls-l again. There you go. The group now only has the read permission and it doesn't have the write permission. And finally, let's take a look at how to use the option to update all of the elements, the group, the users, and the others in one go. We are going to use the same command, chmod. For the user, we define u equals, and now we need to define the permissions that we want to assign to the user. So let's say we want the user to only have read and write. So we are removing the execute permission. Now, comma. So for the group, we want to add read and write. So RW. And finally, for others, we do not want to give them anything. So O equals nothing. So just leave it as empty. So now let's pass in the name of the file, sim mode. So we need to remove the spaces. Let's remove the white spaces that we have. And let's run this. So let's run the command ls-l. So the user now has read and write. The group has read and write. As for the others, they do not have permission on this file. Okay, so this is how you use the symbolic mode. And now let's move on to the octal mode. So in octal mode, the permissions are represented in numbers. So each permission is assigned a value. So the number 4 means read. The number 2 means write. And the number 1 means execute. And the number 0 means no permission. So you can combine these values to represent the permissions. So if you use the number 7, that means you are given read, write, and execute. So that means 4 plus 2 plus 1. And if you use the number 6, that means you are given read and write. So 4 plus 2. And if you use the number 5, that means you are given the read and execute permissions. So 4 plus 1. And finally, if you use the number 4 only, that means you are granting the read-only permission. So now let's take a look at examples on how to use the octal mode. Let's run the command ls-l again. And now using the same command chmod, we want to update the permissions. You're going to be using 3 numbers. The first number, again, is going to affect the user or the owner. So if we use the number 7, that means this user or the owner is going to have access to everything. So read, write, and execute. So 4 plus 2 plus 1. Now we can add the permission for the group. Let's say we want the group to also have 7, so access to everything. And finally, the others, we don't want to give them access to anything, so we give them 0. And now we need to pass in the name of the file. Now let's run the command ls-l. And as you can see, the owner or the user has read, write, and execute. The group has read, write, and execute. As for the others, they have no permission on this file. Now let's try and update the permissions again using different numbers. So let's say we want to give the user read only. So we use the number 4 and we want to give the group read and write. So we use 4 plus 2, so the number 6. And let's say we want to update the permission for the others to all. So we use the number 7. Let's run the command ls-l. The owner or the user has the read-only permission. The group, they have read and write. And as for the others, they have read, write, and execute. So this is typically how you update the permissions of a file using both options. And this is not something that we typically do unless we have a script file that we want to execute. And as long as we are able to add the relevant permissions to be able to execute the script file, that's all that matters. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create a simple bash script, and we are going to see how to apply the required permissions on that file in order for us to be able to execute it. So that's it for this video. Go ahead and practice the permissions that we discussed, and I will see you in the next one. In this lesson, we are going to learn about environment variables, what they are and how they work. So environment variables are just dynamic key value pairs, which is used by the operating system and software to store configuration settings. The way it works is you have a key. The key is the name of the variable. So you can call this any name you want. It can be like name, age, password, and then you assign a value to that key. That is going to be your variable, and anytime you are creating a script, for example, you can always reference that variable that you created to use it elsewhere within your OS. By default, you already have so many variables that are created by the operating system. So to see all the variables that exist on your OS already, you can run the command env, and this is going to list out all the existing variables which we did not create ourselves. So for example, here we have the variable home, which is pointing to our home directory. The other variable that we have is user, which is the username that we have. And most importantly, we have another variable here called path, which is pointing to all the executable path on our OS. So we are also able to create our own variables. So let's say the name of the variable is going to be name equals, and now you need to pass a value. So in double quotes, I'm going to put cloud school like this, and then close quotes. We have now created the environment variable. And now to access the variable that we just created, we can run the command echo, followed by $, followed by the name of the variable. And this is going to output the value of that variable. The only thing is, when you create a variable like this, that means you are creating a temporary variable, as in if you were to exit the current terminal, or if you were to open another session or shell inside your current session, then you won't be able to access this variable. So to test this, run the command bash to open another bash session inside the current session. And now if we run the same command echo, $name, you see that we are currently unable to see the value of the variable that we set. So anytime you reboot your system or you exit the shell, this is going to be lost. Let's come out of this shell, and now we are back to our original shell. So to create a variable permanently, we need to update the bash configuration file called .bashrc, and this is in your user profile. So let's open this file, and we are going to run the command nano ~bashrc, and just use tab to autocomplete. And this is all the configuration that is related to the bash terminal. We can just add a new line by going all the way to the bottom, and we want to add the following line: export, followed by the name of the variable. Let's just say name equals cloud school. Press Ctrl X, save the changes, and let's run the command source $.bashrc, and this is to save and reload the configuration. And now let's try and access the variable by running the command echo $name. So we are able to access the variable. And now if we try and open another bash terminal inside this terminal, we run the same command, and there we go, we are able to access the variable. So this concept of environment variables and variables in general are very important for when you start working with Terraform or any other programming language, as a matter of fact. So for example, if you're writing a code and you are using the same value time and time again across your code, so instead of hard coding it in multiple places, you just create the variable once, you set the value once in that variable, and then you can just reference that variable across your code. And if you ever need to change the value again later in the future, you just need to change it in one place rather than changing the value in your whole code. So this is the advantages of using a variable. So this is all I wanted to show you in this video: how to create environment variables and how to set them permanently. So in the next video, we are going to learn how to create a bash script. So I will see you there. Okay, so let's continue from the previous lesson and let's create our first bash script. The bash script is something that is related to Linux specifically. A script is just a file that has a sequence of commands that the shell executes line by line. So for example, if you have a task that requires you to create a file and a folder, etc., and you want to automate it, you put that all inside a file, and you just give this file an extension which is called .sh. The .sh extension is specifically for bash scripts. When you run that file, then all the commands that you have defined inside that file are going to be executed line by line. Let's quickly go and create the script. So we are going to create a file here called hello.sh, and notice the extension .sh, which means that this is going to be a bash script. And now let's modify the file. And now we want to write all of the commands that we want to execute as part of this script. Let's say we want to echo the variable that we created previously. So we run the command echo and then the name of the variable. So let's say we want to print the working directory. So we run the command pwd. Finally, we want to display the host name of this computer. So we run the command echo $, host name because this is another environment variable that is automatically set for you. And now, as a best practice, we should always include the shebang. And this is how the shebang looks like. So you begin with the hash sign, exclamation mark, and then /bin/bash. And this way, we are always going to ensure anytime we run this script is going to be executed by the bash terminal. Okay, so this is all we need to do. Now let's press Ctrl X, Y, and then enter. So next, we need to be able to execute the script that we just created. So let's run the ls command just to make sure that we have the script file hello.sh. And now let's try and execute it by typing // and then the name of the file. I'm trying to press tab, but it is not auto completing. But anyway, let me just type in the full name and then run it. There you go. I get permission denied. So if you go back to the permission lesson, we said anytime you want to execute or run a script or a program, you need to make sure the user who is trying to run that script has the execute permission. And this is where it comes handy. Let's run the command ls-l. As you can see, as the owner and the user, I currently only have read and write permission on this file, and I do not have the execute permission. For that, we need to run the command chmod followed by u + x followed by the name of the file, so hello.sh. Okay, now let's run the command ls-l. Now you can see I have the execute permission. So let's run the command again, /hello.sh. The command has executed. So the first thing that we have is Cloud School. So this is the value of the variable name that we set. And under that, we have the pwd command, which executed. So based on where the hello.sh file is, it runs the pwd command. So it is as if we are running the pwd command here, and we get the same output, home Cloud School. So we've created our script and it is fine, as you can see. But the only issue is if we want to execute this file, we need to always provide the relative or absolute path of this file instead of just typing the name. So let's say we just want to be able to type in the name of the file and then execute that file. So for that, we need to add it to the path. If you go back to the lesson when we were learning about the different directories, and I mentioned that there was a directory called user local bin, and I said anytime you have an executable file, you need to add it here. There's also another bin directory, which is in your home directory, which is only for you. So if you have a script that only you should be able to run, and then you can add it into this bin directory. However, you use the user local bin directory if you want everyone else on that system to be able to execute the script. So let's take a look at the home directory bin. So the folder doesn't exist already, so we need to create it. Since we are already in the home directory, we are going to run the command mkdir bin. And now let's move the shell script file to this bin directory by running the command mv hello.sh, and we want to move it to bin. Okay, so if we run ls here, we have the bin directory. And if we take a look at the bin directory, that's where the hello.sh file is. So there's already a variable called path. The user local bin directory, you can see it's part of the path. But let's say we want to just have a script that is only accessible by us. That's why we need to add this bin directory inside the path. So to add it to the path, we need to run the command export. And again, the export command is going to make the environment variable available to all child processes of the current shell, followed by the name of the variable, path equals. And now we want to update the path and add the new bin directory to this path. So in quotes, we reference the environment variable called home, and this is going to return the home directory, / inside home, we have a new directory called bin. And this is going to add the bin directory to the beginning of path. Now we need to make sure that we don't remove the existing directories in path. And to do that, we need to add colon and then the name of the variable, path, and then close quotes. Okay, so this is going to ensure that we are just updating, as in adding the new directory into the existing values. So if we run this now, let's confirm the values of path by running the command echo path. And as you can see, home Cloud School bin is now part of path. So now let's try and execute the file by just referring it to by name. So hello. And if you just press tab, you can see that we are now able to autocomplete. And now if we press enter, you can see the script file is now executed and we are able to see the output. So previously we had to refer to the script by the full path or the relative path. But now since we added it to the path environment variable, we can just refer to it using the name. So wherever we are in the file system, we just use the name. And if you use tab to autocomplete, that means it is working as expected. So the only problem is that this was a temporary change. So as you can see now, if we try to access path, if we exit the bash shell, the changes that we made are now gone. So to make this a permanent change, we need to update the bash rc file, just like we've seen previously. Let's open that file now using nano. And if we go all the way down, we just need to add the exact same line that we ran earlier, the export command. So let's go ahead and do that. So export the name of the variable, which was path, equals, and then in quotes, we put home/bin. Let's make sure that we don't remove anything from the path. So we use $path and then close quotes. Press Ctrl X, save the changes, and let's save and load the configuration by running the command source /.bashrc. So if we try and open another bash in here, and let's see echo $path, you can see that we are able to see it. And if we exit this bash and run the same command again, echo path, this is now part of the path directory permanently. So if we try and execute the bash script again, so just type hello, press tab, you can see that it is auto completing. Now press enter, the bash script is working as expected. And finally, if you want to share the script with everyone else, we can just move it to the user local bin directory so that everyone else is able to execute this script. So we run the command cp bin hello sh. Okay, we want to copy this to the user local bin directory. So /user local bin. Okay, so we get permission denied. So we just need to use sudo. Okay, now type in your password. So the file should now be part of that directory. So let's double check by running the command ls user local bin. And there you go, the hello sh is there. Remove the file from the bin directory in our user profile first, just to make sure that we are able to use that. So let's run the command rm rf, and then inside our user profile we have bin, and in here we have hello sh. Let's do that. And now if we run the command ls, we have the bin directory, but inside bin we shouldn't have, okay, wrong bin. So ls bin, you can see the bin directory in our user profile is currently empty since we moved the file to the user local bin directory. So let's run the command hello sh. Okay, I'm pressing tab. I'm not able to execute it. So let's just double check the permissions in there. So we are going to run ls-l, and we want to check the file inside the user local bin directory. So the file is there. As you can see, the owner of this file is currently set to root. So we want to allow all of the other users to be able to execute this file. As you can see, the other section, currently they only have the read permission and they don't have execute. So let's update the permissions by running the command chmod. We can just use the +x, and this is going to give everyone the execute permission. So we want to update the file inside user local bin hello sh, and we need to add sudo. Now let's run the same ls command again. As you can see, the group and everyone else has the execute permission on this file. So if we just type hello sh, you can see this is now auto completing. And if we run this, it is trying to use the file from our home directory, home cloud school bin. Let's quickly exit the bash terminal. Let's log in again. Okay, and now let's run the command hello sh. We are able to execute the script using the user local bin directory. So every user profile on this system is able to run the script. So there you go. This was a rather long lesson, but I just wanted to cover this. And you now know how to create a bash script file. You know how to update the path directory, which is important. So if you want to go and learn more about bash, go ahead and do that in your own time. But for now, this is all I wanted to show you in this lesson, and I will see you in the next one. In this video, we are going to learn about SSH, what it is and how it works. So SSH stands for Secure Shell, and this is a protocol that we use when we want to connect to remote servers over a network. So essentially, this is something that allows us to access and manage remote computers using the command line interface. When we use SSH, the traffic is going to be encrypted. Any data that is being transferred between us as the client and the server that we are trying to access is secure. So SSH works on a client-server model. The client is the device that we are using to connect, and the server is the remote machine that we want to access. When you connect to a remote server, you need to authenticate yourself. Typically, we tend to use public-private key pairs. Alternatively, if you have a password set on the server, then you can also use a password. So now in terms of installing SSH on Ubuntu, so this needs to be installed on the server that you're trying to access. So in this instance, the server is going to be the virtual machine that we have installed. So now let's take a look at how to install it. To install SSH, we need to run the command sudo apt install open SSH -server, and let's just add the -y option. Now enter your password. Because I've already got it installed, I don't really need to install it, but in case you haven't installed it previously, then this is the command that you need to run. And now that we installed it, we need to check the status of this service. So we run the command sudo systemctl, and then we want to check the status of the SSH service. And as you can see, it is currently active and running on my machine. In case your one is not running by default, then just start the service by running sudo systemctl start SSH, and this should start it for you. So there are two scenarios in terms of connecting to the server. So if you are on the same network as the Linux machine, then you just use the private IP address. If you are connecting from another network, then you're going to be using the public IP. So since the virtual machine that we have now is on the same network as the current network that we are on, we can just use the private IP address. So to find out the private IP address of this machine, we just run the command IPA. So as you can see, the private IP address of this machine is 192.168.41128. And if I jump over to Visual Studio Code on my Mac, I can run the command ifconfig. If you scroll up a bit, you'll see that the IP address on my Mac is 192.168.4.1.1, and this is technically on the same network as the virtual machine. We can just run the command SSH. Typically, SSH is going to be listening on port 22. So this is the port number that's been assigned to the SSH protocol. And anytime you want to connect to a Linux machine, by default, this is the port number. So typically this comes in interview questions, and they ask you what is the port number for SSH, and the port number is 22. And now we need to pass in the username that we want to connect as well as the private IP address. So the username on that machine is Cloud School. You change your username here to whatever you set on your virtual machine, followed by the private IP address of the virtual machine, which was 192.168.4.1.128. So this is the private IP address of the Linux VM that we have. Yours is obviously going to be different. So just type in the IP address that you see. And now let's press enter. So we get this warning here. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Just type in yes. We are now being prompted for the password, not your Mac password or your computer password. This is the password that you use to log into your Ubuntu VM. So I typed in my password. Obviously, you're not going to see it in clear text. So once you type in your password, just press enter. There you go. This shows us that we are now connected to the Linux VM. So Cloud School, this is a username that we are connected as, and this is the computer name Ubuntu. So if I run the command who am I, this is going to show me that I am Cloud School. And if I run the command IPA, this is going to show me the IP address of the Linux Ubuntu VM. So we have successfully established connectivity to the remote VM. And this is something that we typically need to do as cloud engineers. Anytime we deploy or create a Linux VM, we need to remotely connect to it using SSH. So we've seen how to connect to the VM using a password. So for better security, like I said, we typically use a public-private key pair, which is also known as SSH key pair. So the SSH keys provide a more secure alternative to password authentication by using a pair of cryptographic keys, which is a public key and a private key. Unlike passwords, which can be guessed or brute forced, SSH keys are nearly impossible to crack because of their complexity, and this makes them an essential tool for securely connecting to remote computers. So let's run the command exit here to come out of the virtual machine, and now we are back on our Mac. So here we are going to run the command ssh-key gen, and this is going to generate a public-private key pair. And it's important to keep the private key secure and never share it with anyone. So the private key is the key to be accessing your remote system, and it has to remain confidential. So make sure that you don't share it with anyone. So here we need to press enter so that the file gets created in this directory that you see here. And if you want, you can set a password for your key pair. However, I'm not going to do so. So just press enter again, and there you go. The public key has been saved in this directory. Now we need to copy the public key to the server. So it's important to note that only the public key is going to be copied to the server, and the private key is going to remain on our client computer, as in on our Mac or Windows, whatever you're using. So before we copy the public key to the server, let's quickly take a look at the contents of the public key. So we need to go to the directory of where this was created. So this is in our user profile in a hidden directory called .ssh. So I'm in the Linux directory, so I'm going to run the command cd ... to go back to my user profile. So here there's a hidden folder called .ssh. So switch to that folder, and now let's clear the terminal and let's run the command ls. So the file that's ending with .pub here is the public key. So you can look at the content of this file. So this is the file that we need to copy over to the server, and the private key is the one that doesn't have pub extension. So we can also take a look at the content of that private key, and this is the one that you must not share with anyone, because anyone that gets hold of this private key, they are going to be able to access the remote server which you are trying to secure. This is the secure private key, and this is how it looks like. When you connect to a server, the client uses the private key to sign a challenge that's going to be issued by the server, and the server uses the corresponding public key to validate the signature. So if the validation is successful, then the server is going to grant us access without asking for a password. Let's quickly go ahead and copy the public key. So ssh-copy-id. And now let's pass in the username of the Linux VM, which was Cloud School, followed by the private IP address 192.168.41.128. And now we need to pass in the password for our user account on the Linux VM and press enter. Now this added the key to our Linux server's authorized keys. And now let's try to connect to the Linux VM using the public and private key pair. So let's run the same command as before, ssh followed by the username, Cloud School, @ followed by the IP address 192.168.41.128. Okay, so now we are connected to the Ubuntu VM. So we are going to check the SSH folder and make sure that our public key has been transferred successfully. So let's run the command ls, and let's make sure that we have a directory here called SSH, which we do. Here we have a file or a folder called authorized keys. So let's take a look at whether this is a file or a folder. So we are going to run the command ls-la, and let's quickly check the content of the SSH directory. Okay, so the authorized keys is a file. So let's read the content of this by running the command cat.ssh, and in there we have authorized keys. As you can see, this key is ending with ed25519, and this is similar to the file that we saw previously on our local machine. So previously we just run the SSH command like this. So to make sure that we are using the private key, we can use the -i option. So back on our Mac now, let's clear the terminal. We are going to run the command ssh-i option. Let's just make sure that we go to our user profile, and inside our user profile, we should have a folder called ssh. And in here, we have the private key. So we just point it to that file. So id, ed like this. So this is going to make sure that we use the private key that we have here. And now let's add the username for the remote server. Mine is Cloud School followed by the private IP, and now press enter. And there you go. We have now successfully authenticated to the remote server using the private and public key that we just generated. This is a very important concept, how to SSH to a remote server, because as a cloud engineer, we do this a lot. So go ahead and practice what we did in this video, and I will see you in the next one.